I'm back once more for a conversation about conversations with Allan Parker. G'day, Allan.
I was about to say good morning, but it's actually good afternoon. Good afternoon. Oh, no, it's not.
No, it is good morning. It is good morning.
It's still good morning. I had an early start, are you?
And just to remind folks, this is a Sparkination conversation, a Sparkination being a spark that ignites passion, that leads to action, that changes what's normal. And we hope that's your experience as you join us through watching this later on. We've been having a marvelous...
I love that term, Ian. I love that term.
Yes.
And it changes what's normal.
It's been an enduring term, first created in 2011.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So it's past the decade mark of being valuable.
Wow.
We've been having this, today's number 11, I believe.
Yeah.
And we were having an uphill and down dale conversation, but we've had this central sort of focus on what we're calling the pillars of wise conversations. And we started out with the 5 that I originally had, folk can see on the board behind, and then we've added those ones in the middle, and now we've kind of rounded out the baker's dozen with, I think, a fabulous 3 in their own right. Courageous, compete with yourself, and composting.
I love it. Composting is the ultimate, it's the ultimate transformation. It is changing the form.
Yeah, it is. And it's been part of my personal process for some time. And I've amazed myself that we didn't have this one before. But it is the ultimate transformation.
Yeah.
I'm personally into composting in my garden, and it's a fabulous process to mix it all up in the tumbler, or I've got these boxes built, and it's a fabulous process to, every time you sort of turn it over and watch the transformation, and you end up with great soil.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think something similar happens to us as people. I've always, not always, but for a very long time, 30 years plus, I've had this idea in my process that I like to compost things. Let things churn away.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's a year.
Yes.
But that's how transformation happens. You put all the ingredients.
Yeah.
I call it the heart mind box.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stick it in the box and turn it over from time to time and see what comes out.
Yeah.
Transformation is always, of some kind, is always the consequence.
And what it's that classic comment that what comes out is greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, significantly.
It is a systems thinking approach in that sense. Yeah, it's a wholeness approach. I had a very early mentor of mine, sort of 40 years ago. He used to say to me, "You've got to improve your learning." And I'd say, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, you're a voracious reader of books, but you don't integrate what you learn with what you already know." And it was a profound lesson.
Now that's a courageous conversation.
It is a courageous conversation, and he and I had many courageous conversations over a period of time. He was a great mentor, and he helped me to work on that idea that when you transform and you implement the transformation, you also need to integrate that with what's already working for you. Again, that brings about a sort of a wholeness. And it does take a lot of courage. I discovered in those conversations with him that part of the reason why I wasn't doing that was a lack of courage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which came from a feeling of vulnerability. I'm blessed by the work of Brené Brown in this area. I think that's a challenge for leaders particularly in conversations, you know, we go back to that wonderful, wonderful, wonderful line from David White, where he said, in leadership, the conversation is not about the work, the conversation is the work.
Lovely phrase.
And I sense lots of times, even for folk that are experienced with conversations, that there's this hesitancy to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think courageous is very much part of our pillars.
Yeah.
And it needs, I think people need to do a lot of personal work, as I have done, I'm sure you have done, to accept that we can be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Of course, the power of conversations in small groups with the same people over a period of time is that as the safety grows, people feel more able to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I mean, you know better than anyone as a facilitator, creating a safe place is one of our key roles.
See, and my phrase around safety, I use safety and security.
Yes, yeah.
I say, if I can create safety and security, or I can play a role in safety and security emerging, safety and security are the prerequisite to courage.
Yes. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I am feeling safe and feeling secure, I can be courageous.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
So I think a safe place is the must be place for wise conversations, any conversations.
Yeah, I agree. That one's really important. And one of my, and it's not a simile, but close to a simile, is I talk about the courage to step into being vulnerable.
Yes.
So a lot of people go, oh, I need to be more vulnerable, and it becomes a thing I'm going to do. G-U-N-N-A, that I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I don't quite get there. And a lot of people say that it's the fear of the vulnerability, and I'm just not sure that it isn't the absence of the courage.
Yes.
Because courage and vulnerability seem quite different, but I think they're joined at the hips.
Yeah, I'd say they're brother and sister.
Yeah.
And I think the idea, the insight that people need to step into it probably says there's a bit of pre-work that people could do to begin that stepping in process. It's a bit of a stepping in and stepping up, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you have such a process? I haven't really. It's just dawned on me. I don't have such a process, but it's a good idea to have one.
I'm having a forensic linguist dilemma here at the minute. Because the idea of stepping into the conversation I like, but not stepping into the vulnerability, because I think the vulnerability lives inside me.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe it's not a, step thing. That's what's happening, but it's not in a physical sense. Do this, do that, do that. Maybe it's more of an attitude.
Yeah. Yep.
It includes things like, you know, an attitude of gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
It includes
Yeah.
an attitude of willingness. It's an attitude really of expectation.
Yeah.
You know, I think the more we have a positive approach to vulnerability and being courageous, the more we're likely to step into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to explore this idea that we do step into a conversation, don't we?
Yeah.
I notice, you know, most of the time the folks in our wise leaders groups, they really do come prepared to step in, but it's noticeable when someone's not prepared.
Yeah.
You know, they've kind of just arrived.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's worth composting, that one.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm trying to separate. I'm trying to work out whether my own conformational bias is in the way, because I am, you know, I'm a extremely self-sufficient human being. And for me, to deliver my vulnerability, I've got to step into me.
Yes, yes.
I've got to go inside of me to find it, to talk about it, to express it.
This is where compete with yourself is part of the story.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's about, I've got a little sort of process. I'll put a link to there's a little course an online course I've put together on Compete with Yourself.
Right.
It's also about collaborating with others, but it's a nice sort of short little online course. But I talk about that if you want to change an outcome, you need to modify, change, or nuance either your intention, your feeling, your mental state, or your physical state, or all four.
Yeah.
They will lead to the desired outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think in conversations, what I noticed with folk, I was having a great conversation with a client last evening, and we were talking about, you know, I kept asking questions about, well, what's your intention? You know, you want to change this outcome, but it seems to me like your intention's not leading in that direction.
Yeah.
And therefore, your feelings and your thoughts and your actions are going to be off alignment.
Yeah.
It was a fascinating conversation, one I've had many times with folks.
Yeah.
So it's getting the intention right. That wonderful poet, Gita Balin, she said, success depends on where intention is. And so if we're stepping into ourselves in order to be vulnerable, we've got to really have a pure intention around that, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Did you say Gita Balin?
Gitabalin. Yes. She's still alive, I think. I've read some of her books. Yeah. Long time. It's a long time ago, but that was a profound shift when I read that line in one of her books, probably 40 years ago.
Yeah.
It's one that stayed with me.
Yeah. She was an extraordinary woman. I don't know if she's still with us.
Maybe I did look her up not so long back. So yeah, but anyhow, that was a great contribution, because, of course, intention is another word for purpose or reason.
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
So when we're pure about that and we want to step into anything, not just vulnerability, I think we get a clarity and an honesty and an integrity that helps us bring forth whatever it is we need to at the time.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's much easier then for our feelings and thoughts and actions to follow.
Yeah. In neuroscience, we talk about intention plus attention equals retention.
Intention plus attention
equals retention.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that.
So if I hear your comment about Gita and I give it my attention and I keep my attention on it by clarifying with you, it's the checking and the clarifying, which does what's called consolidation in the brain, which sends it to the hippocampus and it puts it in long-term memory, which increases the chance of retention.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Just a nerdy Alan Parker scientific little bit.
Well, it does, but it does really bring some great clarity to this idea, because it is about attention as much as intention.
Yeah. And if I'm thinking about, if I put myself in a position where there's something going on and I'm not happy or I'm not fulfilled by it, and I want to talk to you about it, and I've been wanting to do it, but I haven't stepped into it, and weeks have now passed, and it keeps turning up in my head, and it's stealing my attention.
Stealing, yes.
It's stealing my attention. And in fact, again, in Europe, from neuroscience point of view, we say there's somebody renting rural neural real estate without paying rent.
Yes.
But it consumes energy.
True.
And at some point in time, I need to dig in and go, I have to have the courage with the intention to make the step, make the call, set the meeting, send a text, make the connection.
Reminds me of another.
Open the door.
Yes. Just reminded me of another writer that influenced my early years, and that was John Keogh.
Oh, yeah.
Who said, the only thing that keeps us down and keeps us stuck is our thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do waste a lot of energy on this kind of thing, don't we?
Yeah. And
which is really a failure to compete with ourselves.
Yeah. I hear people talk about, I've got a tough conversation to have. And I often ask the question, is it tough because you haven't had it?
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I'm not a good procrastinator. I know if I've got something that's on my mind and I need to talk about it, that I'm always better off once I've had the conversation.
No doubt.
Just always.
I'm pretty good at this. The only mistake that I've made is that I have those conversations before other people are ready. I don't tend to mess about.
I've always admired you for many reasons, but for your courage. fearless, Ian.
I've always believed, why wait? There's no tomorrow.
Yeah. The old phrase, to hesitate is to
He who hesitates is lost.
He who hesitates is lost. Thank you.
Yeah. But I've become a bit more sensitive over the years to wherever other people are at.
Yeah.
Which really that's come about through composting. But I think that it's also that over time I've always been blessed with being able to read people, but I've got better at it as I've let go my own investment in the conversation.
Yeah. Woo. My own investment in the conversation. Yeah.
Carol, my wife, and I, who you know well, we've had a lot of conversations about this in our marriage. You know, she says, how come you're a good listener to your clients and you're not a good listener to me? That used to be her phrase.
And I'd go, is that really a question or a statement?
I think it's different. It's different.
You've hit a spark of nature for me. Your comment about being aware and observant of where the other person's at. And I'm just wondering if I need to, and shift an attention, I need to step into my courage. And once I'm in courage, that takes care of me. Can I then be observant of the other person and go, I've got the courage, where are they at? Is that yes? Where are they at?
Yes.
And can I observe them and listen to them, not hallucinate and have an opinion about them?
Yeah. I like that.
I was talking to somebody this morning and they have a very major problem on their hand and they need to have a conversation with one of their family members about it. And they've put it off for 2.5 years.
Yeah. Which of course has gnawed away at them.
Yes, absolutely.
Causes continual energy loss.
Dreadful effect. Dreadful effect.
Yeah.
And she said to me this morning, I've realized that I'm guessing how they'll respond. And for 2.5 years, I haven't checked that out. And I thought, I think you've just had a breakthrough.
Absolutely, because that's a fear.
Yeah.
Fear of what other people think is right up there with most people's fears.
Absolutely. And it was her, I call it hallucination, that they weren't going to be okay with it.
Yes.
It's a bloody long time for her not to be okay, based on a hallucination of how somebody else is going to be about it.
What was that wonderful insight from Mark Twain about I've had a lot of things, I've thought about lots of things in life, but most of them never happened. Or
yeah.
And we do have this game we play where we and you might because I've been composting this lately about where do these bloody thoughts come from? Because all of a sudden this random thought comes in. It's just a stupid thought. Where the hell did it come from?
In neuroscience, I can tell you it comes from what's called quantum oscillation.
That's that little wonderful thing we've talked about in previous sessions. Yeah.
Quantum oscillation is brain composting.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yes. Yeah.
Because particularly during your REM sleep, your rapid eye movement sleep.
That's when it comes. Yeah.
That's when the brain's processing all the things you've been involved in during the day.
Yes.
And it finds things and connects things that you would never ever do consciously because it doesn't make sense. But when you're composting, you turn the barrel over, there's no set format about how you bring things together. And in quantum oscillation, the brain during REM sleep finds all these bits, and then you wake up and pop an idea and you go, that makes no sense, but I think it could work.
Yeah, or that's totally weird.
Yes.
or sometimes they're very negative thoughts.
Yes.
And I wonder where did that come from? Because it wasn't something I've ever contemplated or thought about.
Yeah. And it could have been somebody who made a comment about something completely separate, but had relevance to something else you were thinking about that you didn't connect at the time, but during your REM sleep, that thought and the other thing finds itself.
Yeah, insightful.
Yeah. Which for me, I've got so much better at not sweating the big stuff or the little stuff really, because I have so much trust in what the brain will take care of if I just shut up and get out of the way.
Yes, true. Yeah, I think I use meditation for that, and this is another work in progress, but I'm working on waking, meditation.
Right. Yes.
Where I'm just letting the thoughts run by. That wonderful Deepak Chopra, we're not our thoughts, we're the one who's having them.
Yeah.
So there's no need really
to
give conscious attention to a thought. We just let it pass by. We can choose which ones we pay attention to, can't we?
Yeah. We're not our thoughts. That's a great line.
I'm finding the more I compost this, the more a lot just goes by.
Yeah.
Because there are a zillion things that we can focus on. I think you said, the observations we have during one particular day are thousands.
Yeah. Immeasurable.
Impossible to take them all in consciously.
Yeah. See, I went down this morning to the cafe breakfast, and it's a buffet. Now I reckon there were 50 things on that buffet, Ian. And I only saw 4 of them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But my unconscious brain probably saw all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So you might have a REM sleep thought that brings up 6 or 7 that you might have had. Yeah.
If we would trust our unconscious half as much as we trust our conscious mind, I think we'd be in great shape.
Trust our own unconscious path.
Unconscious, yeah.
Unconscious path, yes.
Yeah.
As much as we trust our conscious brain.
Yeah.
That's a rich one. Yeah, that's a very rich one.
Because I would say that if we're not in our frontal lobe, which requires us to be oxygenated, hydrated, and calm, if I'm not in the frontal lobe of my brain, I'm not using my highest order of thought. And therefore, particularly if I'm problem solving or making decisions or planning something out, I'm better off to hand it over to my unconscious mind if I'm not in the frontal lobe, because no other part of the brain's capable of doing it. There's only 2 parts of the brain that can solve problems. One's the frontal lobe and the other is the unconscious mind.
Yeah. Again, we waste a lot of energy on the unnecessary.
Oh God, Ian.
Just incredible. I think you're 70, I'm approaching. I wonder how much of our lives we've wasted by thinking about things we didn't need to think about. It'd be a huge amount of hours.
Oh, and we speak at somewhere between about 70 and 130 words a minute, but the science says we think at around about 450 to 500 words a minute.
Yeah, incredible.
That's a huge amount of thought process and a huge amount of energy.
Huge.
And I'd be interested too to think how much of that is just repeating and recycling.
I would think a lot of it.
Yeah.
We and I think a lot of it too, in that sense, is the baggage we carry. I've done a lot of work myself on letting go of the baggage.
Now that takes a little bit of courage as well. I just want to mention that. I don't want anybody to think that was a simple statement you just made.
No, it's not it's a simple statement to make, but a hard action to take.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's necessary because we don't realise this is part of the slip from being born magnificent to becoming miserable or mediocre.
Yeah,
is we allow our baggage to hold us down.
yeah, yeah.
And it takes a lot of courage to do the work to change the brain's memory of what happened.
Yeah.
Or to take a different perspective.
Yeah.
On what happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it was probably a decade after my father's death that I got rid of the baggage around him.
Right. Right.
And it was painful work. But I came to a conclusion that he was honestly doing his best.
Yeah.
And that I was at fault in blaming him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of the baggage around that just went away when I came to that conclusion.
What did you do to get to that point or that conclusion?
I just revisited the stories I'd made up about our relationship.
Oh, wonderful. So they weren't the accurate accounts, they were the stories you made up.
That's what I concluded by and large.
Wow.
And I realized that I'd made them up from my perspective.
Yeah.
And, it was a great relief to realize I'm carrying around this suitcase full of shit about stuff I made up.
I have a feeling that comment could resonate to every one of us listening.
I mean, and it's heavy. It weighs us down. So that was just one example of, and I think it's been the case when I've looked at different things that I've realised of baggage, to explore the stories we've made up around the relationship or the situation.
Wow.
Is a great pathway to get clear of it.
Yeah. Gosh, I've got to jump in and mention episodic memory.
Yeah, well, that's
what you're describing is episodic memory.
Yep.
Episodic memory. I'm just remembering my experience of what happened, not necessarily what happened.
No.
And if I jump in and believe that's true, or let myself believe it's true, I'm going to create the experience as if it happened or not.
That's right. That's right. And of course, the brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not. And that was a great lesson for me in my early years as well, to get hold of that idea. And of course, the conclusion from there is that everything's made up.
Now take it easy, Ian. Take it easy. We've only got a short amount of time. You're opening up a hornet's nest here.
It's probably one of the great realizations.
Yeah.
Is that most of the things that exist in the world, if not all, due to somebody's attachment to something that they made up.
Yeah.
And the powerful people use that to their advantage, unconsciously or not.
Yeah.
So that's a great, and I think that's been helpful in the last decade where I've been focusing on conversations. It's a very helpful insight for people to realize that, I don't know how, I've said this quite a few times in the groups that I'm close with, you do realize that that's something you made up.
Yep.
Which is a confronting thing, but in the safe environment, it's an okay statement. And it's quite a shock to people often that they haven't realized that they've made it up.
Yeah. Episodic memory, one of the characteristics of it, we feel very certain about it.
We think it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And act as if it's true.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed.
Yeah.
I've thought about this lots over a long period of time in the context of, one of my favorite lines from Shakespeare, this above all to thine own self be true. And I've thought about that in this context, because what is truth if everything's made up?
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, there are things that are true, and there are things that we've come to agree on that we accept as true. But a lot of what goes on in our worlds is just made up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good thing to bring up in conversations, and I find it very helpful for people to meet their challenges, solve their problems.
Yeah.
Because the great gift of wise leadership is the ability to change one's mind.
Yeah, indeed.
Based on new evidence.
Yeah.
I find that frustrating with a lot of political and religious and business leaders, that they're unwilling to change their mind based on new evidence.
Yeah. Ian, you sparked my memory going back a bit there. When you say everything's made up, and a lot of people go, oh, well, no, not everything. Over 22 years ago, 23 years ago, I had the opportunity of teaching on the New South Wales Bar Association Bar Entry Program. And for me to teach about to be barristers, communication and questioning techniques, I had to be damn well informed.
Yeah.
And particularly not being a lawyer. Screwed their heads a bit. How can a non-lawyer be teaching us how to ask questions? And so I spent a year, every time I was in the city and had a chance, I'd pop into a courtroom and listen and study the language, the questioning patterns of the lawyers and barristers, and the judges, in fact, or magistrates. And I can't tell you, Ian, how many times I sat there and I'd hear one person's evidence and the other person's evidence about exactly the same event.
Yes, of course.
That bore no similarity whatsoever.
No.
They both had a completely different story, over and over and over and over. And that was one of the things that occurred to me in that moment, is we've all got to be mad or we're making stuff up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the latter.
Yeah.
I teach people how to have accountability conversations, and it involves 4 questions. The first question is, what happened? I often don't need the other 3.
My favorite 2 in the what happened is, what did you see? And what did you hear?
Yeah.
Not what did you think, feel, or have an opinion about or evaluate.
That's right.
But what did you see through your eyes?
Yeah.
What did you hear through your ears? And not what did you say, think, or feel about what they said.
Yep, that's definitely part of the answer to the what happened question, or the conversation that follows.
Yeah.
And I often have to say to people, well, that's a feeling or opinion. We're more interested in what you actually heard and saw.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So it's
such a vital distinction.
It's incredible when you ask people what happened, they tell you how they feel or give you their opinion.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is not actually what happened. But it's
and those feelings and opinions get into courtrooms.
They do. They get into a whole life.
Yeah.
And of course, they're what stays in the brain.
Yeah.
Not actually what happened.
Yeah.
I know when I was thinking about my issues with Dad, I spent a lot of time and energy trying to think about what actually happened, and I found it very difficult.
Yeah.
Because we've got these stories.
Yep. Yep.
But sorting out the stories and reframing those stories and making different conclusions, I got rid of one suitcase, which lightened the load and gave me more energy for other things.
Yep. Yep.
And that's happened every time I've let go a piece of baggage.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the things that happens in wise conversations through this courageous compete with yourself composting, as well as the other 10. We enable people to free themselves of their baggage.
Yeah. 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 Enable them to free themselves of their baggage. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I've got a wacky Alan Parker altruistic step that I have put in place at times that's made the letting go of the baggage easier.
Yeah.
And I wrote to a prime minister once and suggested that it was a missing step, and it is to actively, regularly forgive.
Yes.
And I think in my own self-sufficient way, me forgiving, genuinely forgiving, not saying it, but genuinely giving forgiveness.
Yeah.
I would say that's one of my greatest acts of vulnerability.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can say without question that getting rid of the baggage, forgiving the person or the people involved was a big part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And alive or dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I've written letters to a few dead people as a way of forgiving them out loud.
Yep. 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 So I'm playing, I've got your composting metaphor well and truly in my brain. And I'm just thinking, I'm wondering in the composting process, if the forgiveness is where the nutrients leave the compost and enter the soil.
What a wonderful metaphor.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep, I reckon that's possibly right.
Yeah.
The richness of that composting creates in a soil, difference that makes to vegetables and plants,
yes,
is extraordinary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even when I haven't been able to do my regular composting recently, so I've been buying a bit of it, and it's not the same as making it in your own garden from your own stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that set me off on an Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole, that one about what happens in composting when we're composting feelings and thoughts. Forgiveness would definitely be part of the process, I reckon.
Yeah. And my last wacky Alan Parker step is to search for the quality that arrived in me by going through the process. E.g., what did I learn and take out of it? For which I'm grateful. I do that one. You know, I think you use that lovely term, attitude of gratitude. I think you used it right at the beginning today.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
I just think an attitude of gratitude might just be the bow on the present.
I think, as you know, I got the phrase from my doctor when I was 23 years old.
Right.
and it made a profound difference at that time and has continued to make a profound difference.
Yeah.
It's one of my 8 heart qualities, gratitude.
Yep.
It's right up there with love, which is another one of my 8 heart qualities. And I think a number of conversations I've had with lots of folk over the years is that when we're grateful for the situation, whatever it is, it's a fast track to getting past whatever it is, or solving whatever it is, or meeting the challenge, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Carol and I, we often do out loud gratitude when we're on our daily walks.
Yeah.
Where we talk out loud about what we're grateful for.
Yeah. Yeah. So important.
It's a great reminder.
So important.
Of, just how good the world actually is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though it's all made up.
Yeah.
And of course, the excitement about that is that we can feel and think whatever we want, because we're in this world of infinite possibility.
Yep. Yep.
I think it was Einstein who suggested we only actually use a very small percentage of what we're capable of.
Yeah.
And I think the more we do these things that we're talking about, and the more we're grateful for every experience, the more we open up our capacity for creativity, and embracing, possibility.
Yep. With you there, brother.
Well, it's probably at the end of our time for today.
Yeah.
A joyful, wondrous conversation once more.
Deeply fertilizing.
Yes, that's right. No need for extras.